around 94% of UK service family accommodation is at decent home standard or above. Only service family accommodation at those standards will be allocated to new occupants. Since April 2016, around 14,500 kitchens, bathrooms, roofs, doors, windows and some 10,000 new boilers have been installed.
Liz McInnes.
I thank the Minister for that response, but the Armed Forces Continuous Attitude Survey in 2016 showed a significant drop in satisfaction amongst those living in service family accommodation, with a decrease of 7 percentage points to just 50% satisfaction. Can the Minister assure the House that a further drop in satisfaction will lead to urgent action being taken by the Department?
Well, I can, but equally I'm confident that after the Secretary of State's intervention last year with Carillion Amy and the Get Well plan that was introduced, we have seen significant improvement in satisfaction. That may not yet have filtered down into the survey, but the recent stats from that show that we've risen from a 40% satisfaction rate to a 61% satisfaction rate from the service from Carillion Amy. But we too take this very seriously, which is why I'm keeping a very close eye on it, and I'm determined that the services standard should continue to improve.
Sir Julian Brazier.
Mr. Speaker, could I congratulate my honourable friend on the progress they've made on the Carillion Amy contract, but would he agree with me that continuing to have service family accommodation, the patch as it's affectionately called, is absolutely critical in providing a supportive arrangement for families when their loved ones are away on operations or indeed on extended exercises?
Well, I think what our families really want is choice and support. But what I would say to my honourable friend is that only last week I visited Salisbury Plain, and where I saw in Tidworth, in Lark Hill and elsewhere some 1,000 brand new service family accommodation homes being built. So we do take this matter very seriously. I'm confident that SFA, as it's referred to, will continue to be provided, and some of those homes really are of absolute first-rate standard. But it is about trying to support the modern lifestyle of our service families in the way that they work.
Immensely grateful. Dan Jarvis.
A recent Army Families Federation survey on the future of military housing showed that if SFA was reduced in favour of a rental allowance, 30% of those surveyed would definitely leave the Army, and a further 46% would consider leaving. What does the Minister think that the Government's future accommodation model will do for retention rates?
Well, as I say, I think it's all about choice, and if the honourable member looks at that survey, he will realise that he will see that the overwhelming number of young soldiers, sailors and airmen who are yet to be married support the model that we are proposing. We've yet to make any firm decisions. We've now reduced it to some 7 options which we're running through a business case, but I will keep the House fully informed as we progress.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst I welcome the Minister's comments, so far we still have 40,000 members of the Armed Forces who have not been consulted on the future accommodation model, and for those that have, there continues to be this anxiety that the question of whether SFA remains a real option for those families is actually real.
Well, I'm going to refer to my earlier comments, really, where, as I say, only last week I visited Salisbury Plain, where we are building 1,000 new SFA units. They are of excellent standard. SFA will remain an option, but it's absolutely clear that one size does not fit all, and depending where you're serving in the United Kingdom, then different options will have to be available.
David.
Mr. Speaker, last November, the National Audit Office reported that, and I quote exactly, poor accommodation for service families is affecting the morale and the recruitment and retention of service personnel. In other words, the situation is deplorable. My concern is that only lip service is being paid to these very real worries. Surely to goodness, warm words and tinkering are not enough. Real action is needed. Why won't the Minister acknowledge this and introduce real improvements quickly?
Well, I'm really disappointed to hear the honourable member's comments. Only last year, some £64 million was invested in service family accommodation. Next year, we will be investing some £80 million in service family accommodation. Perhaps rather than sitting on the green benches here in Parliament, he would like to take up my offer to come and see some of my new build that we are building for our families on the Salisbury Plain. Well, then here it is. So come, rather than sitting on the green benches and constantly carping.
Philip Holloway.
When service personnel are on active service abroad, the last thing they need is problems with their domestic arrangements and accommodation at home. So will the Minister ensure that when service personnel are on active deployment, the accommodation helpline works absolutely perfectly for their partners at home?
I think my honourable friend makes a very valuable point. I think when spouses are overseas on deployment, this is absolutely the time that we must focus on offering support for their families, and I will look very carefully at what my honourable friend says.
Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that quality accommodation are central to satisfaction rates and retention rates? And would he therefore also agree that, having invested a large amount of money in service accommodation at the Dale Barracks in Chester, it will be a false economy to now close those barracks?
Well, the driver, of course, for the Better Defence Estate strategy is military capability. But it is important that we have good quality accommodation, and as he knows, units will be relocated in his part of the world, and we'll look carefully at that.